Hi, I'm Brienne. Have you wanted to paint watercolor outside, but you just don't know where to start? Then this video is for you. Watch as I demonstrate how I paint monochromatic paintings on site. It's a great learning tool, and also it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of benefits, including the fact that you're focusing on value, ignoring color for a little bit, which makes it easier. Also, you get to practice paint consistency, pigment versus water ratio, which is key in improving your watercolor skills. So there's a lot of good lessons to learn here. Watch as I demonstrate this painting while on site when I was in Italy. Let's get to it. The first thing you're going to want to do when you get to a location you want to paint at is to walk around. Look for the subject that you want. You're looking for good value shapes. You want light, middle, and dark values to be able to work with. Then you're going to do a value study. I do a value study before every painting, and that's what I did here, and I drew out my composition onto my watercolor paper. To start off with, when you're doing a monochromatic painting, the key thing is you're going to be using a dark neutral pigment. Today I was using Payne's Gray. Happens to be a Michael Harding paint, and that's the only thing I'm going to be using. So I'm thinking of just light, middle, and dark shapes. So I'm going to start off with the first wash, which I do when I'm painting in color. So by painting monochromatically, I get to practice the process of painting without having to think of color. The key things I'm looking for as I'm studying outside is the light and dark value shapes, because that's what gives us the illusion of light. Color is definitely important, don't get me wrong, but value is important because it creates the structure of the painting, so composition and design is key, but also it creates the illusion of light. So notice how I'm using my squirt bottle as I go. You'll notice that I do that a couple times. And the whole idea of this first wash is to paint around my lightest areas, basically my whites, which in this case is the side of that cathedral, the sunlit side, I should say. So I'm painting everything else around it. That's the only thing I'm thinking of. Now, if I was going to do this in color, I would be thinking of the same thing, but I would be adjusting the colors. This is why this is great practice. Now, for those who've seen my tea to butter video, I am using, and I suggest you go watch that if you haven't, but I'm using tea consistency, maybe coffee, lots of water, a little bit of pigment. And you'll notice I keep using my squirt bottle to keep things alive because I want that bead in order to keep moving down. My paper is at a very vertical angle so that I could film this. When you're just starting out, don't worry about it being that angled. However, I would suggest not having it flat because you want gravity to work with you. So as I'm moving down, again, I'm just thinking of going around anything light. Now notice I am bringing in some of the shadow details, again, just going around the light areas. Here, I'm being very careful to go around just the highlight of where those cars are. I don't have to get every single one, and I can always cover them up later. And then I'm also going to go around this sidewalk, which is lighter value. So that's basically the first wash. And the first wash should be fun. It should be quick, lots of water. Remember, just think about going around the light areas. All right, in this demonstration, the next thing I'm doing is actually going into more details. I don't generally do this right off the bat, but I do like to start top to bottom. So what I'm doing here is bringing in more pigment. So now I'm using coffee to milk consistency, okay? Probably mostly milk. And you'll notice, you may have thought the first wash was so dark, but watch what's happening as I'm bringing in this darker value. Look how light that first wash appears. And this is the reason why, one of the reasons why working in black and white or monochromatically can really help you understand value. Because value is relative, and this is one reason why I think watercolor is difficult. And that is that you're always comparing everything to white paper. And so everything looks dark. So it's really hard to learn how to get your values in, correct with respect to each other. Okay, so what I'm doing here is bringing in kind of some back middle values of indicating some of those houses and whatever buildings back there, because those trees in front are gonna be darker. So I'm just indicating a few things. You don't have to get too crazy with it. Now I can start to bring in some trees. So these tree shapes, they're just masses. Remember, trees are blobs with finesse. Blobs with finesse at the end. And the other important thing about the trees is that it is a dark shape that is overlapping the lighter shape of the building in front, which gives us that overlap feeling, and so that we see depth, right? The buildings in front of the trees. If you haven't watched my video on negative painting, I suggest you do that. And that can help you understand the importance of learning how to negative paint. But back to the trees. So I'm just making big masses, finessing the edges, and then here I'm going to put in a few trunks. And if you just have a few that are pretty good, then the rest can be kind of funky, right? Remember, this also, have fun with this. Treat this monochromatic painting as a study. You're learning the process of watercolor. You're learning the pigment ratio. You're learning value. There's so many great lessons, okay? And you're just learning to be outside, which painting outside and on site is very different than painting in your studio. It is a skill that you've got to practice at. So this is why this is great practice. And you're studying light and shadow. And that is the power of plein air. Remember, the power of plein air is not to finish a painting. That should not be the goal. The goal is to study from life and study light. Okay, so I have painted around those car shapes. Notice how I went over some of them. I didn't, keep all of them, but I did try to keep those highlights that I could, bringing in a few just subtle details of where those darker shapes are. Now I'm going to bring in even darker values. So now I'm getting to milk to cream is where my darks come in. And what I'll do is this is the shadow side of those trees. So I'm trying to pick out the shadow shapes within the trees. Now remember, this is done plein air, so not necessarily from the reference photo. This was done on site, but I was noticing some of the trunks were lighter. So using negative painting, I kind of go around those shapes. Also, the general thing I'll do is do a dark shape and then I'll rinse out my brush and I'll soften an edge or two. So some of the edges are soft, some are hard. Now with some darker middle value, I'm going to bring in a few details in those back buildings, a few windows, darken some of the roofs. That just adds to the depth of the painting. Now I'll bring in more shadow shapes within those trees. Again, painting around the trunks, which are lighter. Just focusing on the shapes that I see. Then I'm going to bring in even darker shapes. I use my fingernail to kind of soften things and make rougher edges. Now that left tree, going to bring in its dark shadow shape. And I just keep working at it, keep connecting the darks that I see. And this helps connect all of those wonderful shapes. Now I'm going to bring in some of the shadow shapes that are on the ground, on that slanted slope of ground behind. And those darker shapes will again inform the terrain. All right, now now I'm going into the details, and I'll go in varying what's going on in the grass, along the edge of the grass, and then along that edge of that sidewalk. Now you'll notice the sun came out, full sun, so everything looks so much brighter. But I hope you still see. I was just continuing on with the painting, and now I'm bringing in a lot of the details. So I have my small detail brush, and you can add as much detail or as little detail as you want. I have the big shapes at this point. If you notice, I was going back and forth between my value study and what's in front of me. And the more and more I work on the painting, I look at my value study and the painting, not the scene in front of me, because it's already changed. All right, so last little thing, I'm bringing in more of that shadow shape and So now I've finished the painting. And this monochromatic painting I can use back in my studio to create something else. Remember, the key takeaways of this is that if you get outside and paint monochromatically, you can learn more about paint consistency, practice the paint process, focus on value, and just have fun with it. Thanks for watching. If you want to learn more from me, please visit my website at travelingcolorstudio.com. Also, please like and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it. I hope that this demonstration of watching me paint a monochromatic painting on site gives you the confidence to want to get out and try it. So get outside and paint. Happy painting.